Hi, I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for joining us. Today, I'm here with Garth Landers, Director of Global Product Marketing at Theta Lake, to tackle one of the hottest topics in the world of unified communications: how to unlock the full potential of Microsoft Teams without hitting compliance roadblocks. So as Teams becomes the go-to collaboration hub for organizations, handling everything from voice and video calls to chat, file sharing, and integrated apps, staying compliant while driving productivity is a challenge UC leaders are eager to solve. So I'm thrilled to have Garth Landers from Theta Lake, an expert in enabling seamless compliance with Microsoft Teams. Theta Lake's tools are designed to empower UC leaders to activate all the most popular Teams features across the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, including SharePoint, OneDrive, and Purview, while keeping compliance and governance front and center. So welcome, Garth. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Garth, we're here to discuss Theta Lake's, proposition, how you're working with organizations with compliance, and really excited to have you on today. But to kick things off, why has compliance in Microsoft Teams become such a hot topic for businesses today? And what are the biggest compliance challenges companies face when using Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, I think you outlined some of that in your preface, Rob. I mean, Microsoft Teams is more than, a messaging platform. It's where today's employees really work. It's a front end to so much, right? We think of Teams and we might think of like the chat interface, for example, but it's really the interface into leveraging OneDrive, leveraging SharePoint. There's voice aspects. There's all of the communication ingredients that go into these communications, like emojis and reactions and GIFs and memes. So it's a really comprehensive approach towards collaboration and communication. And from a compliance standpoint, that can seem daunting to organizations today, because maybe in the past, they were dealing with email and maybe voice as well, but all of this other, essential and additive components of communication that have been part of this transformation in the way we've worked in the last, 10 years or so, can seem daunting in terms of, having oversight, as you mentioned, having thorough accountability, knowing that you have the data that's essential for, governance requirements and responding to those events.
And can you explain how Theta Lake's compliance tools integrate with Teams and what makes the integration so seamless?
Yeah, so we directly we have a direct content integration with Teams through the API. We support all of the areas in terms of visual, voice, and textual communications. And so from a integration standpoint, it's really a seamless 3-point process to get going and have connectivity with Teams and Theta Lake to make sure that you're not encountering any sort of compliance gaps as you start to adopt new features. We've been supporting Teams since our outset in 2017, and continue to evolve as Teams comes out with new and more features all of the time. So we track and keep pace with that development, as Microsoft's a very important partner of ours.
Well, I'm curious, Garth, what features within Teams are the most at risk for compliance breaches nowadays, and how does Theta Lake help mitigate those risks?
Yeah, I think when you look at Teams and you look at the rich set of functionality and what's the potential for a compliance violation, it comes down to user behavior, so it can happen anywhere. But there's a wide spectrum of tools that are available, right? Again, as users communicate, they might not be typing, messages in, understandable, concise, straightforward, language of their choice, whether it's English or whatever. They might be interspersing it with memes or GIFs or reactions and using basically, coded language if they're involved in any kind of potential malfeasance. Similarly, I think, the potential gaps that exist is because, again, Teams encompasses so much in terms of, voice, visual communications, embedded communications, and, within chat and chat itself, that context switching. If you're a compliance or IT personnel trying to find and determine and ascertain potential risk, where do you start, right? So it's really the potential complexity, and mesh nature of those communications that can seem really challenging and lead to potential gaps and then subsequent fines and violations.
Well, it's giving me a headache just thinking about it. But if I'm an IT manager or a compliance team, how do I manage all this? How does Theta Lake simplify that process of record keeping and oversight?
Yeah, I think it's important to, take a measured, disciplined approach, right? Typically, and this includes working with Teams customers, organizations don't try to tackle everything at once. They're not going to try to, boil the ocean and make sure that they're doing, taking the same approach across voice, video, textual communications, whiteboards, and all of the other things that are, that they need for potential record keeping requirements. Typically, they start, if they're looking to adopt a new channel or new feature, they want to make sure that they're covered and that they can address that potential gap. So with Theta Lake, they can start sequentially, address that particular business challenge, whether it's, Teams messaging, whether it's supporting voice through, things like Operator Connect, for example, and start there. And then know that with Theta Lake, they've got a future-proof sort of approach that's built to address all of these things, and they can take that on in a modular, sort of frictionless approach.
Yeah, I like that. That makes perfect sense. One step at a time. Well, we do hear a lot about something called configuration drift as well. How does Theta Lake help companies stay on top of the configuration changes that are going on within an organization?
Yeah, that is a good question. And that's a very unique challenge, I think, that we've seen in this emerging space of digital communications governance and archiving that Theta Lake is a part of. The idea that, in a Teams environment, you have so many policies and capabilities that are continuously rolled out and added to your Teams environment as Microsoft enhances and adds new capabilities to the Teams infrastructure. You might start to see that reflected in your administrative capabilities, and of course, those policies, those sort of baselines that you have for admitting, how are you going to control entry to a meeting? Is a PIN going to be required? Is there a waiting room? Can outside people from outside your firm that are part of a Teams meeting share content, for example? Can they, save and record? All of those sort of user-based permissions and things that you want that, promote sort of, necessary kind of information barriers and protection, that can erode over time and lead to what's called configuration drift. In short, what Theta Lake does is guard against that, right? It gives you sort of top-line visibility through reporting and notifications that, this has changed. Is this something we want to remediate and address and fix? So you're constantly, when appropriately, when changes occur, notified and proactively, can start to respond to those so that, it's not something that's discovered later where, policies changed over time, a control setting has changed over time. And again, because we work very closely with Microsoft, we track, new Teams capabilities, features, and enhancements. We, again, build that into our configuration drift management in unified capture, proactive compliance that helps organizations stay on top of configuration changes.
That's great. That makes good sense. And for organizations handling sensitive data, how does Theta Lake ensure that compliance doesn't come at the expense of data privacy and security?
Yeah, well, there a few things come to mind with Theta Lake. Things like information barriers, making sure that that we're enforcing capabilities, some of which exist in Microsoft today, and then some that we extend across different content types. Making sure that a broker dealer doesn't share information with marketing or vice versa. Those types of access patterns and controls are enforced. And then also through what we call proactive compliance, when it comes to data privacy and security, if risk is detected, you probably want to do something about it, right? And so
Mm.
things that you have available through Theta Lake include remediation, redaction. So if there's something that appears in a team's group chat, for example, that you want to remediate or you want to redact, you want to remediate and get it out of there, and include getting it out of the source system, out of Teams itself. Theta Lake can do that. So, those are really pretty progressive, approaches towards information protection. Again, for unstructured content, really largely not available elsewhere today in the DCGA space. Very important.
And for organizations that are maybe worried about or concerned about completeness in capturing, voice, video, text, and anything else that's thrown at them potentially, how does Theta Lake handle that kind of completeness picture?
Yeah, so there's a few modalities there, right? So I think, first of all, when you talk about content in general, the first thing Theta Lake does, with capturing data and managing it through Theta Lake, is provide what's called reconciliation. So this is really a detailed, kind of an easy to sort of discern auditability, report, right? That gives you sort of the upstream and downstream data about where content came from. Did it come from Teams? Did it come from, Teams voice? Did it come through, chat? And where does it live today? Is it in an Azure storage environment? Is it in Theta Lake's archive? Is it in a third-party archive? So this is really important to demonstrate to outside, stakeholders like auditors, for example, and gives you that real auditability and detailed metadata about where content lives, so that you can ensure completeness. Now, there are other things we do as well, in terms of high availability, and making sure that all of the data is captured, and there are no fail points, and that there's redundancy built in to our architecture, so that during voice conversations, during text communications, that there is no loss or gap during that capture or recording or archiving space, so that, to answer your question, everything is complete in terms of capture.
That's great. And just jumping on to implementation, I mean, what does this look like from an IT perspective? How complicated is the process for deploying this type of solution?
Yeah, really quite simple. Theta Lake was built in mind with supporting today's your existing infrastructure and archiving choices. We recognize that some organizations may have spent years, maybe even decades, building that architecture. So we're not looking to disrupt that. We fit seamlessly. I mentioned before, if you have your own third-party archive, we support that. We fully support you as an organization bringing your own storage and bringing your own key, because you own the data, right? So that's really important to us. And then from a deployment standpoint, if you talk about things like capture around, Microsoft Teams messaging, that's really a three-point process for deployment, right? So it's a three-step process, achieved really in minutes, and the results in fast time to value. Now, when you talk about some of the downstream applications as well, when we're talking about really complicated stuff, or what appears complicated, detecting risk using machine learning and artificial intelligence and natural language processing. Those are things that, are pre-built. Theta Lake comes with, pre-made classifiers and risk detections that are built on banking and regulatory requirements, privacy and security requirements. So, with the click of a button, with the check of a box, you're deploying those risk detections and using machine learning and artificial intelligence to detect risk. So the time to value is really fast. Again, hours, days, weeks in a week in a POC. Compare that to legacy vendors where they're building you bespoke solutions, customized environments. They own the data. low and slow time to value, sometimes resulting in certainly months, sometimes years. So quite the contrast with Theta Lake.
It's a really interesting landscape, isn't it? I mean, digital communications compliance is continuously evolving. The workplace is evolving. AI is now here. There's a lot happening in this space. How will Theta Lake kind of play out in the future and stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, well, I talked about kind of the regulatory guidance that we receive, right? That we work with and listen to regulators. I think there's two other really essential ingredients. One would be our customers. Again, our customers, some of them include some of the largest banks in the world today, multinational global financial services institutions, are at the forefront of adopting, today's latest unified communication and collaboration tools because they view that as a competitive advantage. And they want to adopt that. They're, aggressively adopting that. And they don't want compliance to be a barrier to that. So we work very closely with them. So, in addition to the regulatory agencies and our wonderful customers, we also are benefiting from the fact that some of the largest and leading unified collaboration and communications providers today are not only partners with Theta Lake, but also investors. So we work very closely with some of those firms that help drive innovation. And as mentioned, we really keep pace with all of the leading platforms. We have a very busy and productive product and engineering team that provides continuous releases throughout the year with Theta Lake and keeps pace with the latest communications. We are really durable and future-proof. So if you start with us on a modular basis, you can be assured that we're built for whatever your future communications compliance needs may be, whether they're voice, video, whiteboards, contact centers, work management streams, and you name it. We probably support it today in our 100 plus integrations.
Amazing, Garth. Thank you so much for sharing some valuable insights with us. I mean, this area is always really, really interesting to our audience. And it's clear that Theta Lake's playing a pivotal role in helping organizations maximize Microsoft Teams capabilities while keeping compliance rock solid. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And for our viewers, if you're considering how to balance compliance with productivity in Teams, Theta Lake solutions are definitely worth a closer look. Whether you're handling sensitive data, navigating regulatory requirements, or just want to provide a seamless, compliant experience for your team, Theta Lake has you covered. So I'm going to drop some links down below to find out more on this topic. So thanks again, Garth, once again. Thank you for our audience and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to UC Today for more updates on the latest unified communications news. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.